Welcome back to Beginning Composition. This is your PowerPoint presentation beginning on Chapter 19. Chapter 19, Sentence Sense. When it comes to writing and creating, do you ever read a paper out loud after you write it? Reading aloud and editing can greatly improve the quality of your paper. After we think about that, why is that? Why is it best to read a paper aloud and then take the time to edit? Well, as a speaker of English, you already possess the most important of all sentence skills. You have sentence sense. This is an instinctive feel for where a sentence begins, where it ends, and how it can be developed. At this point, please review Activity 1 on page 365. What is wrong in these paragraphs? What is the writer missing? At this time, please pause until you have finished Activity 1. Did you figure out what was wrong in each of these sentences? For each of these paragraphs? Remember the importance of reading your paper and work aloud. By reading aloud, you turn on the natural language skills that come from all of your experience of speaking English. The same sentence sense that helps you communicate effectively speaking will help you communicate effectively in writing. After reading the paragraphs, what you should have come to find out with Activity 1 is that they were missing capital letters. After every piece of punctuation, they remained having lowercase words. In summary, using sentence sense, you probably did well in locating the end stops in those selections for Activity 1, proving to yourself that you do have some sentence sense. Remember, reading aloud your paper is one of the most important parts to writing, composing, and creating great papers. Chapter 20, Fragments. So we've talked a little bit so far about dependent clauses, but what are fragments? What we've learned is that every sentence must have both a subject and a verb, and it must express a complete thought. If the fragment is there, it leaves the reader feeling, what are you saying? What more could you tell me? A word group that lacks a subject or a verb and does not express a complete thought is a fragment. The most common types of fragments are, number 1, dependent word fragments. Number 2, ing and to fragments. Hopefully you see these as gerund phrases and infinitives. Number 3, added detail fragments. Number 4, missing subject fragments. When it comes to fragments, again, fragments leave the reader asking questions. They do not have a subject and verb, and most likely, without proofreading your work, they are likely to be left in your paper. Things like the grammar check on Microsoft Word do not always catch fragments because of how they are placed and how they are put together. Here are a few tips. Sometimes the dependent words who, that, which, or where appear not at the very start, but near the start of a word group. So if you look at the word that, one thing that we will continue to talk about is that is not necessary in sentence writing. Most of the time, you can eliminate the word that, and the sentence still makes clear, concise sense. When this happens, that we use the words who, that, which, or where, a fragment is often the result. So looking at our first example, a place where people make cheese. How can we fix this sentence? A place where people make cheese. A cheese factory. So right now what I see is that we have what we consider a descriptive word, an added detail fragment. So a cheese factory is a place where people make cheese. I need both a subject and a verb for that sentence to make sense. Second example, the downtown quarter that is dirty. Well, how can we fix the second sentence? Hopefully you see one of those dependent words, that. And of course, if I remove that, I say the downtown corridor is dirty. In our first example, when I was talking about a cheese factory is obviously the subject of our sentence, not only do we have an added detail fragment, but we also have the word where, and that adds to the dependent words. Another place that can continue to offer you dependent fragments is if you use a comma if a dependent word group comes at the beginning of a sentence. So, if you do not use the comma, most likely you've created a full fragment. As you can see, after going to the mall, comma, I was exhausted. If I did not have that comma, I would have a full, complete fragment. Even though there is a subject and a verb, it's still part of my dependent clause. That dependent clause, because it starts with after, means that I do not have a full and complete sentence. So further explanation about why that is not a full, complete sentence. After going to the mall, I was exhausted. What happened next? What else would you be looking for if you didn't have that comma there? What are you wondering about? So we need to make sure that the comma is there, so the dependent clause stands away from the independent clause of the sentence. So what we're talking about here are incomplete phrases. To, the word to, starts an infinitive phrase. These phrases are not complete sentences. So, if we use to, just as we have here in this sentence, to starts an infinitive phrase, comma. That first part, that infinitive phrase, is considered a dependent clause. And we need to make sure that that dependent clause stands away from the independent clause. These phrases are not complete sentences. The second one, ing words are not complete verbs by themselves. Hopefully you saw that with our past examples of running and jumping. How could these words stand alone as a complete phrase? What do we need to add to those ing words to make them a full verb phrase? Well, ing words need help, just like their phrases, to make sentences complete. And the words that we can use with those ing words are, of course, our Chad, be, swim. So any of our helping linking verbs could help make an ing word part of a full, complete verb. To continue on our conversation about dependent clauses, a dependent clause is another word for a fragment. It means that a sentence does not have a subject or a verb, or it could mean that the subject or verb are improperly placed. When a dependent clause happens, you will need to try and figure out what is missing. So when we've talked about prepositional phrases or infinitive phrases, one reason to cross those out of sentences is because we need to make sure that our subjects and verbs are outside of both the infinitive and our prepositional phrases. So when finding out what is missing, follow the rules for parts of a sentence. Again, cross out the prepositions or the prepositional phrases. Circle the infinitives. Underline a subject once. Underline a verb twice. And this will help you figure out what is missing. Here are a few examples. Running down the street, chasing the dog, the cat which was yellow. Do you think this is a full and complete sentence? If not, what is missing? Hopefully you see that we're missing the full, complete subject of the sentence. So it says the cat which was yellow. Because of the word which, it creates a dependent word, and that which needs to be eliminated. Also, the running down the street, chasing the dog. Who or what was chasing the dog? or who or what was running down the street, we need to offer the sentence more clarity. So we could say, the cat was yellow, period. The yellow cat was running down the street chasing the dog, period. We could offer it twice, or we could say that the yellow cat was running down the street chasing the dog, period. The second sentence, when dinner arrived, which it was late, was cold. Is this a complete sentence? Hopefully you realize that what we are missing for the sentence is actually the subject. We can see at the very end, was cold, obviously relates back to the dinner. But because of all of our commas, we've created dependent clauses, and we need to complete an independent clause. So when dinner arrived, it was late and cold. Complete sentence. There are ways that we can change it, but we need to make sure that we have a subject. Right now, what I would like you to do is complete review tests 1 and 3. Please complete the review tests 1 and 3 beginning on page 378. I expect that you will all have different sentences for review test 1. For review test 3, please send me whether each sentence is a C for correct or F for fragment. You will find 7 fragments in the paragraph. When you are complete, email this assignment to me.